Well, hello there. Looks like we are potentially live. I think I have sound. Nobody's jumping on. Wait. We have people on. 4 live stream viewers at least. If you're jumping on right now and seeing me live, you should be able to hear me okay as well. Good morning, folks. 17 people on looking at me. Hey, if you get a chance, if you're just jumping on, literally, I just clicked go live on the my LiveStream app, and looks like we are sounding and looking good. So good morning. We'll let a few people jump on while I continue to caffeinate with this wonderful crap I found at the gas station. What is this? Nitro cold brew, extra bold, but it has a lot of caffeine. I literally have 55 live viewers within the first couple minutes. That is impressive. Wow. Man, oh man, maybe the multiple posts that I made on what this morning's live stream is going to be about. It's one of our fundamental things that we've talked about in many live streams before. I actually call this a special event because, to be honest with you, I've done numerous videos on grip. And one of the things that I think my students and my members appreciate is the in-depth discussion we have on grip and grip mechanics. And when I say grip, that's watering it down. I should say structure, because when we're talking about controlling the recoil of the handgun or a rifle or a shotgun, and all these principles we're going to talk about today will honestly apply with just about any weapon system that you're thinking about shooting. We're talking about structure, and that literally starts from the ground up. Okay, so and that's what today's special event is all about. So good morning. 61 live viewers. It is incredible to see all of these people on. I love it. Hey, oh my gosh. Phil Strader's on this morning. I just caught his name in the side of my, kind of the corner of my eyeball. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. That's awesome. Hey, so here's the deal. If you are an old hat to this, if you are one of my members, Quinn members, or an ACSS member, or if you've been on the live streams for a long time, you know that I'll get into some safety and some introductions and talk about who's on real quickly. So now is your chance to share. Maybe we can hit 100 in the first 5 minutes of the show, which is possible because we are at 75 right now, which is completely unbelievable. I haven't had this many people on for a long time, or at least this fast. So now is your chance to share it to some of the groups you're members of on Facebook, and maybe send a text or two and say, hey, jump on Facebook, go to the Shooting Performance page, or the IDPA page, or the American Warrior Study page, and check out Mike Seeklander. We're talking about structure and some of these little tiny micro details of gripping a handgun properly and how we can do that in a good manner. Of course, nothing happens without safety and without some of our discussions. So I have a few guns here we're going to be talking about and showing you. I have one of my beautiful new SFX9s. This is my little compact SFX9 that I am playing with a lot of different things on. I've switched the optic out several times. I'm playing with the no rear sight with kind of an interesting backup sighting system to a front sight. And this little bad boy will probably be my very soon near future carry gun. So that's my near carry gun. This dude is unloaded and clear and completely safe. Also, I got guns laying all over on my desk right here. I've got a Wilson Combat slide top end Glock 19. This is one of my teaching guns that I use on a regular basis. You can see that this is unloaded and cleared as well. Got a lot of wear and tear in this bad boy. I really put this sucker through its paces. And I've got a couple 1911s behind me that we may grab if I need to grab a 1911. And of course, I'm going to be demoing and talking about the grip mechanics in terms of what my hands are doing with certain pistols. And these are actually made by Next Level Training. This is my buddy Mike Hughes. Not a show sponsor or anything anymore, but a guy that's provided some great products to the industry in terms of using to train with or whatever else. Of course, we have a bunch of people on. Let's see who we have on this morning. I know I saw Phil on this morning. Akeen, good morning. Akeen Jeremiah is on. Good morning. 2109, Steve in Missouri. I see you. John from Oklahoma. Dell, good morning. Florida. I think we've had Dell on before. Jimmy, good morning. I'm not sure if I've seen Jimmy on before. Rabina, if that's good. IDPA is in the house, of course. Good morning. IDPA, Brian Schuler. Hello, Shane. What's up, man? Hey, Shane. Juicy is on from Finland. I think we've had you on. Is it Juicy? Maybe I don't know how to pronounce that. Maybe that's about right. Hey, looks like we're about to hit 100, by the way. 83 people on. So if you all are sharing, we will hit 100 this morning, which is incredible. Hey, Steve Washington, U.S. Concealed Carry Association in Cedar Springs, Michigan, which, by the way, we're talking about doing an FIDC firearms course up there next year. All right, let's see what else I have on here. Man, Dan is on this morning as well. Good morning, good morning. All right, a lot of people on. Joy, good morning from Roanoke, Virginia. I love Roanoke. I used to visit Roanoke on a regular basis. Nice to see you as well. Okay, folks, if you're just jumping on, or if you're wondering who you're watching right now, hopefully you would already know that because you probably had someone share this. My name is Mike Seeklander, and we're talking about structure. I'm going to talk about structure from the ground up, but more importantly, I'm going to be talking about exactly how I grip a handgun for maximum speed and accuracy. And when we talk about this, let's discuss this real quick. When we're talking about speed and accuracy, anytime you're shooting a handgun, you have choices, right? And your choices are to shoot the handgun very well. I guess technically you have a third choice. So your first choice might be to shoot the handgun and hope you hit something, right? I don't think anybody on this live stream has an interest in shooting a handgun and hoping they hit something. The second choice is to shoot a handgun very accurately, right? To learn how to shoot and hit anything you aim at. Like no matter what, you're going to aim at something and you're going to hit it. And the third is to be able to shoot that handgun very, very accurately and very fast at the same time. And that is truly the challenge. If you look at any of today's top practical shooters, I know Mr. Phil Schrader's on with 6 Hour. He's certainly a top practical shooter. We've been shooting together for years. Our buddy Rob Latham, all of the top shooters out there, Dave Savigny, Max Michelle. I mean, I can name all of my buddies out there that I shoot with. These guys have the ability to literally pick a spot out there, pick a target, and put a bullet anywhere they want. And most of them can do it on the move, on the run, on the setup, on an exit, et cetera, et cetera. And to do that, they are building enough of a structure around the handgun in order to control the recoil. Okay. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to break that down into detail. Good morning, by the way. Man, we got more people jump on. We are literally about to hit 100. Some of you all shared. You are all some sharing groups. I love this. Simon is on. Good morning, Simon. Daniel, by the way, if you don't want to share it, just click the like button a couple of times or post a comment. What Facebook sees is they see people liking something or commenting on something, and then they show it to other people. So if you get a chance, reach down, click that little thumbs up or that little like button, and maybe put a comment in the thing. Tell me where you're from and going from there. Now, of course, I have established and shown you that all my firearms are unloaded. Before I continue on, I want you to make sure that right now you check your firearms. If you're going to handle the firearms with me on this live stream, please make sure they are unloaded and clear. Double check right now. If you have a carry gun on or a loaded firearm near you because you're on duty or working or whatever else, that's perfectly fine. Just please don't handle that gun in a situation or a direction where it's not going to be safe. Okay. And we hit 100, by the way, which is absolutely incredible. Hey, TC's Fuller. Dr. Fuller is on this morning. How are you, buddy? Philip Rucker from Georgia. Good morning, Philip. How are you, sir? James Huddy, Milwaukee. Nice to have you. Frankie, nice to see you as well. Melvina, good morning, California. It's early in California. Richard Schlar from Kansas. Good morning. Radio and Guns. Radio and Guns. Good morning, Radio and Guns. I see you as well. Jerry Abierta from the Philippines. Nice to have you as well. All right, if I didn't say good morning to you, good morning because I missed your name, but I'll say good morning as we go. So let's talk about let's go through the details. What I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize this gun for a while. Then I'm going to switch to the Glock 19. Then I'll switch to one of my SIRT pistols. And what I want to be able to demonstrate is the differences in, or I guess I should say the difference in my grip based on the handgun I'm shooting. So in terms of talking about structure, one of the things that I want you to be aware of, and let's give you a little bit more down angle on the camera here. One of the things that we need to remind ourselves is when we're talking about building that perfect two-handed structure with a handgun. And by the way, we can talk about one-handed structure today. It's all about structure. And I'm going to give all of the top keys to structure away in terms of controlling the handgun. So we can talk about one-handed or two-handed structure. And you're going to find if you think about this the proper way, the principles are the same. So if I'm trying to build a two-handed structure, we start from the ground up. Right now, if you were to look at my feet in the perfect stance, and I know some of you are thinking, well, Mike, there's no such thing as a perfect stance in a gunfight. We'll get to that in a second, right? I got that. But the point is, with a perfect stance, more than likely, if I'm a right-handed shooter, my right foot is probably going to be slightly back. My feet are going to be somewhere outside of my shoulders. And remember, the width, if you look at the width of my shoulders compared to the width of my feet, if my feet are outside of my shoulders, this allows me to use that lower body position to move the gun, right? So if my feet are inside of my shoulders, I can't turn my body as efficiently or as quickly. So if you're talking about transitioning or reacting and defending the gun or doing anything that requires some sort of movement of the gun, your feet have to be outside of your shoulders. They don't have to be a long ways outside of your shoulders, but they have to be outside of your shoulders. So if you want to test that, take your unloaded firearm, aim it, directly in front of you. I want you to take your feet, and I want you to put your feet inside your shoulders. So now I'm going to put my feet nice and narrow. So my feet are literally, from the camera's perspective here in terms of my shoulders, right? And then take your gun, and I want you to wind up about 45 degrees or as far as you can go to the left, and I want you to find a spot on the wall to your right. And when I say go, I want you to drive the gun over there as fast as you possibly can, and I want you to try to stop the gun. Now I want you to do the same thing in the opposite direction. Take your gun and point it to the right. Okay. Now when I say go, I want you to drive the gun as fast as you can to a spot on the left-hand side of your wall, maybe a light switch or whatever else, and try to stop the gun. And you're going to find it's very hard to get the gun moving, and it's very hard to get the gun stopped. Now, compare that to this. Now take your feet nice and wide. I want my feet outside of my shoulders. I want you to put the weight on the balls of your feet. I want you to bend your knees. Do this with me right now. And I want you to take your handgun with your feet wider than your shoulders, wind it up to that spot on the left-hand side. Now, this time when I say go to drive the gun over there, I want you to push off your right foot. So when I say go, it's like you're trying to push away from this spot on the ground as hard as you possibly can and stop the gun. Now, I want you to do the same thing in the opposite direction. Aim to the right, and I want you to drive the gun as fast as you possibly can to the left. And you're going to find there's a big difference in your ability to utilize the width of your lower body position, i.e. your feet, knees, etc., to drive the gun left and right. And you may say, well, Mike, what if I'm not a competition shooter? What does this actually matter? Well, it matters in a lot of aspects. It matters in an aspect if you're in a position maybe behind cover and you need to drive the gun over there because all of a sudden the guy pops up from behind a car over there. You may utilize that torquing motion of your hips to retract and pull the gun back and defend it in a close quarters circumstance. If you haven't, by the way, seen some of my close quarters materials, I posted a series of like 9 or 10 tips weeks ago on Instagram. Find Mike.Seeklander on Instagram. Scroll back and you can watch all of those videos. I only post tips on Instagram now that are relevant shooting or tactic tips. I don't post a lot of other junk. I don't post a picture of my birthday cake on a regular basis, although I probably should. So check that out as well. So the first rule in terms of building a good structure starts in the lower body, okay? The second thing is I want you to pay attention to is my hip position, right? So my hip position is key. What I want to do is I want to have my hips as square toward where I'm shooting as possible. And if the target's generally in front of me, this is not a big deal. I'm going to move my hips in this direction so you can see what the points of my hips are doing. If I'm shooting a target there, my hips are squared this direction. If I'm shooting at you, my hips are squared this direction. If I'm shooting at a target that direction, my hips are squared that direction. And where this comes into play oftentimes is when we have to do a wide swing on a target, or maybe when we're shooting on the move, but we're moving that way, and we're trying to shoot at a target this way, in which case I would take my hips and I would rotate them by turning the lead foot toward the direction I'm trying to shoot. I'm going to give you even a different camera angle here. So if I were to do that, I'm going to take my hips, right, and I'm going to turn them by pointing this foot toward the target. What that does is when I'm trying to wind my body up and shoot on the move on a target to my left, for example, by pointing the foot, that naturally starts to point the hips. So I could be moving if I needed to and shooting on the move in that direction. So the second thing I want you to pay attention to, aside from your feet, is your hip position. I want your hips to be as square as possible, right, in terms of actually shooting the gun. I need a little auto camera. Somebody needs to design an auto camera that moves with me. And I'm not one of them that does it electronically, one that manually moves because I have so much motion. Maybe I should get a studio or a fancy studio which is coming here in the very near future. You will see me live in a very cool studio soon, hopefully. Anyways, the point is, get the feet right, get the hips right, keep the hips square the target. Let me talk about the third thing, and then we're going to dive into what I'm sure you're most interested in, and that is the specifics of gripping the handgun. Where do my hands go? What do I mean? What does Mike Seeklander mean by clamping or crushing the back of the gun? Because a lot of you have asked the question, well, Mike, I can't get the other hand the back of the gun. Don't worry, I'm going to address all of those questions. I'm going to go through like the top 5 questions I get on grip, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A for you as well. But before I do that, it's critically important you understand structure starts from the ground up. We talked about the feet, wider than shoulder width. We talked about the hips. Keep the hips generally square to the target. I don't want to blade the hips off. And I'm not, which is one of the reasons I'm not doing the old school weaver, because the weaver position, or a weaver-like position, call it whatever name you want, make up a name, it doesn't matter to me, takes the hips and pivots the hips. If we pivot the hips, we tend to pivot the upper body in the same direction we're pivoting the hips, and it makes our natural pointing direction less efficient if you're trying to shoot very, very accurate and very, very fast, okay? And good morning. Hey, good morning, Sarah from Gunslinging Mama's Group. Good morning. Tony's on. Good morning, Tony. Sarah. Nick C. Good morning. Bob is on. I haven't seen a lot of these new faces on. Ryan Nelson. Hey, by the way, we have 111, 112 now, 114 now. It keeps changing. Live viewing watchers. We're talking about structure. I talked about the body and the lower body. We've also talked about the hips. Let me talk about the last thing that's really important. And let me give you a visual demonstration. So the last thing that I see in my students oftentimes, and this is very common. This is actually very common with really, really good shooters as well. And I'm not talking about top level, maybe some of the guys that are shooting on the practical shooting circuit, but let's just say really well-trained civilian, law enforcement, and military shooters I've seen do this. And here's what I see. I see them set up a perfect grip. They're super strong core, all these tough guys or whatever, right? And they got a pretty wide and aggressive platform with their feet. And maybe they have that right foot braced back just a little bit, right? So on a right-handed shooter, their right foot would be braced back slightly, right? But when I watch them shoot, they're shooting from an upper body position that is somewhat compromised. So if you can tell where my upper body position is, I want you to pay attention to two things. My shoulders and my hips, okay? So if I'm shooting from this structure or this position, if you would describe my shoulders and my hips, how would you describe them? Think about that for a second. Look at the relationship of my shoulders and my hips and describe that position. Most of you, if you're looking at that closely, would probably describe my shoulders and hips being basically even, or maybe even the position I just showed you, my shoulder is slightly behind my hips. The problem with that is your upper body becomes a lever, right? So what happens is when you're shooting the handgun, even though I have my right foot braced back, I've got a good bracing mechanism, my upper body lever is in the wrong position. So when the gun recoils, it pushes this direction. When it pushes this direction, right, it will continue to push my body to the rear. And I have literally seen really good shooters shoot a sequence of my 5-shot pace drill and look like this. This is what I watch their body do. Boom, 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 boom. And their upper body, I'm talking tough guy, tougher than me. Their upper body moves 2 inches. And I'm like, hey man, if your upper body, when you're firing the gun, moves 2 inches to the rear as you're firing it, is that a good or bad structure? And they can't possibly say that's a good structure, because the more the angle increases, pay attention to this because I'm getting into some deep stuff here. The more the angle is upright, the weaker the lever is against the recoil force, right? That's really important. So this position has to be such that we get the body weight behind the gun. So a lot of good instructors, by the way, will use the term nose over toes. Sorry about my camera, folks. I'm kind of Fine. So they'll say, get your nose over your toes, which I agree with. We need to get our nose over our toes. But what we forget to say is we have to counterbalance with the lower body as well, right? So when I say, when I'm shooting, if you look at my shooting position, you would see me get my nose over in front of my toes, but I'm going to counterbalance with my lower body. Let me give you another video of that. I know I'm adjusting the camera a lot, but that's the only way to do this, right? Unless I get some of you to come help me with my camera. Watch. I hate to say it on camera. Look at my butt. I'm sticking my body out here, and the butt is compromised. So I'm coming back here, right? So this is if you would call this a deadlifting or the position you might squat from, I'm counterbalancing this where I'm off balance by doing this, right? And I'm kind of exaggerating it for the camera effect, but the point is it's a very athletic position that I can move from, but now I have an upper body position, right, that will absorb the impact, and I'm counterbalancing with your lower body. So get your nose in front of your toes, right, and then make sure you're counterbalancing with your lower body. Okay, if that makes any sense to you, right? Can't tell you how important that is, and I can't tell you how often I see that done wrong, believe it or not. Okay, and a lot of these tips, by the way, I'm going to chop a lot of these tips up. They will be on my Instagram page. You can find me on Instagram at my actual name. Unlike everybody else out there, I don't have some weird pseudo name. Mike Seeklander, that's my Instagram name, I think, unless we change it. Just kidding. All right, so let's talk about grip. We talked about the lower body, and let me scroll back to see what I'm missing here. Hey, good morning. Hey, Las Vegas is in the house. I see that. If you have a question, please post it up. And Chris says, don't skip leg day. Amen to that. Don't skip leg day. We got to have an athletic position. Shooting is an athletic endeavor. And by the way, we literally have 127 people on. One of the reasons is a lot of you click that little like button. So click the like button if you're on right now. You don't have to comment. You don't necessarily have to share. If you click like, what I've realized recently is Facebook says, hey, they like this. We should show it to more people. And then we have, 100 and some people on. Like back in the day, we used to have 500 people on. Okay. I don't see any more questions. Let's talk about the grip, and I want to break this down in kind of a different direction. I'm going to teach it, but I'm going to go through it very quickly. But I want to answer a lot of the questions I get on live streams. Okay. Now, if we're talking about the grip, let me use the full size grip real quick for you. Actually, I'm going to switch to this pistol right here. Okay, unloaded, click off. So, rule number one of the grip that most of you probably know, I'm going to show you in this direction is my strong hand has to drive very high up the back strap of the gun. The reason I'm showing you this direction is I'm trying to show you where the web of the hand and my hand actually makes contact with the gun. So when I actually index and touch the grip, my hand makes contact with the grip. Turn on the side here. And then I drive my hand up the back strap of the gun. So during the draw process, when I'm grabbing the gun out of my holster, whether it's a strong set holster, appendix holster, or wherever it comes from, doesn't really matter, I'm attempting to drive my hand up the back strap of the gun. Now, let me give you the key tip there to remind you of the detail you need to be paying attention to. If I do this properly, I am feeling and indexing the point where the tang or the web, maybe let's call it the beaver tail of the firearm, indexes my hand. You can look on the camera right now and tell that if I were off to the left a little bit, I would feel it touching there, right? If I were off to the right a little bit, I would feel it touching there. So I want to index and touch the right spot that's going to allow me to build the best grip for me and have the gun in front of my dominant eye. Some of you are saying, well, Mike, how do I know what this spot is? And it's a very simple answer, right? To find that spot with your grip, a good two-handed grip, you should aim the gun. So right now I'm literally aiming the gun. My dot is exactly in the middle of the camera. So this is about as perfect of a grip as I could possibly build, right? And in this grip position, I'm going to let go with my left hand, and I'm going to show you where my beaver tail on a 1911 or, the grip portion or the tang of the firearm would touch the web of my hand. So that's my spot. Now, please, some of you may have been told at some point in time, we need to line the gun up with our arm. We don't line the gun up with our arm. Think about this for a second. If I'm aiming at the camera right now, is the gun lined up with the arm? Type in your comments. Is my gun lined up with the arm? No, right? Sorry, I'm answering my own question. It can't be lined up with my arm. If the gun was lined up with my arm, I couldn't point it straight in front of me. Notice it's crooked now. So the gun is lined up with what? The gun lines up with your dominant eye. So here's the second question for you to type in the comments. What is Mike Seeklander's dominant eye? As you can see, my left eye is my dominant eye. And that's going to allow me to find index point 1. Okay? So we talked about the strong hand grip. I want you to literally take your hand, if you have your handgun unloaded right now, push it up the back strap of the grip. When you wrap your fingers around, you should feel some pressure here, like between the trigger guard and your middle finger. And you should feel some pressure here between the tang of the firearm, right, and the web of your hand, in the right spot. You know, I could probably take a pin, you know, and draw a spot right there in the middle of that thing. By the way, you instructors, that's a little tip for you. I teach that in my FIDC course. Okay, so that's the strong hand. Okay, the second hand is always going to index by touching the trigger guard, right? I call this the chop, the Judy chop. My hand is at a very specific angle, right? And let me scroll down to the comments. We have 145 people live on, which is fantastic, unbelievable. Gilly's talking about the good old days where we had 300 to 500 live viewers on. That's true. We had 700 on one day until the Facebook crashed or something crashed. I'm not sure, right? Look at this, man. We have so many people. Joey Russo's on as well, probably in California. That is so awesome, Sue. Thank you. Way to represent to you as well. Will Zirk Asgal. I mess up these names all the time from the Philippines. Good morning. That's an incredible name. Wow. All right. So, by the way, for those of you that clicked the like button, that is what's driving the traffic today. So this is a lesson I learned. Thank you for clicking the like button. If you don't like this, I guess you could click what is there? There's an unlike button, maybe like that. Hopefully you're not doing that. Anyways, so here's the point. Once we get the strong hand of the gun, the second hand is going to index here. Let me show you. I showed you how to find this point. If you don't know where it is, rewind the video when you're done, when the live stream's over. And I'll post this on Instagram as well. How do we find where to touch the second hand? Because this is something that I find that even my students that are in class listening to me teach it don't always understand. Because I'm talking about indexing here. So what they do is they start to index under the trigger guard and they start to touch the spot on the trigger guard that they think is the right spot. Well, the most important thing you can do there is to figure out where the spot is that we want to index into the trigger guard. We'll talk about more about the Judy chop here in a second. So how do you find this spot, right? And here's how to do it. Grab the gun with a perfect strong hand grip like we just talked about. Take your thumb, flag it up and out of the way. Now, we are reverse engineering this. If you're watching this, let's make sure nobody can throw this out there in the improper context. I'm reverse engineering my grip. I don't build the grip like I'm about to show you. I'm reverse engineering it so you can figure out where to chop in your trigger grip. All right. So here's the deal. Take that strong sport hand, and I want you to push it into the side of the grip where we're trying to make contact with not just the side of the grip, but also the rear portion of the grip handle, right here. Okay. So I'm going to put my hand into place. Both of my hands are literally pushed together. There's no gaps, okay? And then you're going to wrap your hand around into the perfect position, right, where your hands fit together like pieces of a puzzle, right? So that's really, really important. So once I've done that, now I can take my hands and I can unwrap and I can pay attention to where I'm touching that support hand. So that spot right there would be the spot that I want to touch. And you may say, well, Mike, how do you use that? Well, when I draw, I index and I use it. If I had to run to a position over here, run to the back of the car, or run to a position in competition, I would run into position and chop into that grip. I use it all the time. If I had to clear a malfunction, I may go tap, wrap, chop, and rebuild the grip. If I had to do a load, and you do manual manipulation of slide, that's what I use that Judy chop position for. So Figure out where your spot is. And then after that, we start to apply grip pressure. Let's talk about grip pressure real quick, and then I'll open up for Q&A. Grip pressure. How hard do I grip the gun? As hard as I can without causing a tremor. How much pressure do I have in my strong and my support hands? They're about even. I don't do 60-40. I don't relax my strong hand in an attempt to pull the trigger faster because I think trigger freeze is caused by tension in the strong hand. I don't believe that. Trigger freeze is caused by the inability to release the trigger. So if you've taught your trigger finger at some point in time, let me show you this with the SIRT pistol. If you've taught your trigger finger at some point in time to pull and hold tension in your trigger finger once you fire the gun, you're wasting time and you're creating tension in your trigger finger and you're not learning to release the trigger. Once you fire that shot, you should be releasing the trigger immediately. So once again, watch it. Watch my trigger finger. When I fire that shot, I release it and I reset it to the prep point. Some of you may say, well, Mike, you're maybe losing contact with the trigger as well. Certainly am. I don't care about that. What I care about is firing the gun and then releasing the trigger as quickly as I possibly can to get ready to reset it, right? So I tie that back in with, I don't need to relax this hand to pull the trigger fast. I can grip the gun really hard with both hands, and I can release the trigger if I've taught myself to release the trigger. So my grip pressure is about equal, right? I'm gripping about equal with both hands. Some of you instructors may say, hey, really try to grip a little harder with your support hand. I don't have a problem with that because I think what happens is we naturally grip the gun hard with our strong hand, and our support hand sometimes needs to be told to grip the gun a little bit harder. But I'll tell you what I do. I, generally speaking, grip the gun hard with both hands, and it's about equal, okay? Last but not least, I take my hands and I counter-rotate them. So I take the palms of my hands and I push them in like this. Watch, I've hooked and I push like this. With this hand, I'm going like this. So when I say counter-rotate my hands, this is what most people miss. I'm doing this, right? Okay, this. I'm not doing this. Some people here counter-rotate and they see this. I'm not doing this. I'm doing this, right? And I'm pushing grip pressure on the back of the gun. Some of you may say, well, Mike, here's another question I get. Well, Mike, when my strong hand's on the gun, I can't get my support hand on the back of the gun. I know you can't get your support hand entirely on the back of the gun. I get that, right? But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to not just push here. I'm trying to push here. So by doing that, watch my palm of my hand. Push, push. But to do that, I have to start with a somewhat relaxed and flag thumb to open up this portion of my grip so my left hand can go into position. So when I say grip the gun, put pressure on the back of the gun, we have to agree that our strong hand, or maybe you're a lefty. If you're a lefty, your hand is already on the back of the gun. The other hand is simply trying to crush as much of this rear quarter panel as possible, right? And the position of the hands facilitates that. So I'm not just putting pressure here. I'm putting pressure there. Can you see the difference? Which is also why skateboard tape in the right spot and aggressive stippling on the right spot on the grip are important to me. Like this has skateboard tape on one side because I carry this against my skin concealed sometimes. It has a pretty aggressive grip back here, but what I would do to improve this particular grip is I would maybe add additional stippling here. I would increase the friction between my hand there, if that makes sense, so I can grip the hand. Some of you ask, and I'll answer one more question, and then I'll get into some details. By the way, hey, good morning, Brandon Power. See you on as well. So, Mike, how do you apply the same grip to a small gripped handgun? Right. So this is a full size Glockish grip. Right. That's what my hands look like. Right. Okay. If I take a smaller grip, right, like this, the principles are the same. So what I mean by that, let me remove the gun. If my hands are gripping the handgun like this, right, the pressure and what I'm doing with the backs of my hands is the most important. So a big grip, maybe like this. A smaller grip handgun, maybe like this, right? So the principles on you can't see as much of the grip because my hands are covering most of it up. The principles are the same though, right? So in terms of where I'm pressuring the gun, there's no gaps or spaces, right? And I'm still trying to drive my hands and palms and push them in the back of the gun, if that makes sense. Okay. So grip the gun as hard as I can without a tremor. I'm counter rotating the hands. I'm doing this, not this. And I'm not saying this is wrong. This pressure direction is one that a couple of top shooters out there, I'm trying to think of who I can give an example. It doesn't matter, but the point is, this is not necessarily wrong. What I find this does is it rotates my shoulders, my elbows up, and this causes me some shoulder pressure or pain. My elbows are always slightly bent, but they're bent in a natural down position, right? I don't flare the elbows up, because if I flare the elbows up, that may pull the back of my hands apart of the bottom. If I try to force my hands down, right, it might pull the pressure from the top of the gun. I want as even and as much pressure with the palms of my hands as possible. Now, I'm still gripping with my fingers in my hands, right? But I'm trying to maximize the pressure on the back of the gun. By the way, some of you that are smaller, some of you female shooters that are watching this, the principles are still the exact same. Wide, aggressive feet. Keep your hips square to the target. You may have to take your upper body and get it even more aggressively behind the gun. You may take your strong side foot and you may brace it even farther back to do that. But you're going to have to lean your body into the gun and keep your shoulders and your hips relatively square to control the recoil. Don't lean back. So the lighter you are, the harder it is to control that recoil, because your upper body is simply lighter. Where my upper body weighs, I don't know, whatever it weighs, 120, 30 pounds, my upper body, because I'm 230 pounds. If you weigh 110 pounds, you're going to have to adjust your angle a little bit more to control that recoil. Okay. Hey, good morning, Donnie Green from Virginia. Hello, hello. Will Parker from Montana. Good morning. Brian Schuler says, my splits are usually 25 to 30. Is that hesitation to release the trigger, or are you just slow? I don't know, Brian. I have no clue what you're doing without seeing what you're doing. And when we paint a general picture, my splits are XX. There's no way for me to answer that question, right? So my counter question will be, splits on what? Splits on an 8-inch piece of steel at 15 yards? That's pretty good. Splits on a wide open target where you're trying to hit the entire target at 3 yards? Maybe that's not as fast as you could go, right? So there's no, you can't look at a split. If you don't know what a split is, the split is the time, boom, boom, between those two shots. That's when we're talking about a split time. And a lot of shooters get really focused on splits. And it could be a lot of different things. In terms of your question, when I see people try to go fast, so maybe we do a progression drill. Rob Latham and I just did this with one of our recent classes. And a progression drill might look like this, where you're going to increase the speed. You can see the laser on the handgun, right? So I'm going boom, 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 boom. So I'm increasing the speed where every next shot is slightly faster. It's very, very difficult to do that or demonstrate that. But what I might see is a shooter may go boom, 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 boom. There's a point where they cannot release the trigger anymore. They go and they fail to release the trigger. In that case, that tells me that the problem is not necessarily tension here. It's you haven't taught your finger to release the trigger when you fire. So every time I fire the gun, I release the trigger. So work on releasing the trigger faster, and understand that splits are dictated by the target you're trying to hit. So how big is the target? What are the complications? Is there a non-threat? Is there a hardcover narrative? We can't just look at a split and say a split is it. There's a new rhyme for you. The split is it. My split is. Here's what's the target? What's the target size? It's really hard to say, if that makes any sense. And Jan, thank you for commenting on that. All right. So Dan said, what you're saying is proprioceptive indexes are important to building consistent, repeatable grip. Dan, that's exactly what I'm saying. Proprioceptive indexes are important to building consistent, repeatable grips. Yes, maybe I should write that down. That sounds pretty darn smart. That's exactly right. Hey, Bo from Idaho. Good morning, man. How are you? That's right, Joey. We're talking about reversing the process to build your grip. Hey, by the way, still have 130 people on, and I don't have a whole lot more time. Maybe I'm going to go to class. Maybe I'm not going to go to class this morning. If I don't go to class, I can stay longer. Who wants me to stay longer? I do some cues. All right, throw your questions up there. If you are on just watching me, my name is Mike Seeklander. We talked about structure from the ground up. I got to have a sip of my high caffeine coffee right now. But do me a favor, please, and click that like button and share it. And let's rock and roll with some questions. By the way, this stuff is incredible. If the owner of La Colombe Coffee Nitro Cold Brew is watching this live stream right now, you could sponsor me, and I'm very, very cheap. You could sponsor me for $3 million a year. That's fair, right? There you go. Someone put that on Instagram. I'm just $3 million a year. I'm kidding, not that much. We can work numbers. We can talk about that later on. Have your people call my people. Hey, John Fleming from Southern Illinois. Good morning. Oh, dude, Joey Russo, let's talk about that. Joey Russo brought something up. So let me give the basic parameters, and then, Joey, if you have a question, you can ask from there. And by the way, Jim from New Jersey, good morning, good morning, good morning. So we talked about the two-handed structure, right? It started from the ground up. If you missed some of that, I can't go through the entire thing again. You have the ability to rewatch this or catch it on Instagram or YouTube later. So we take the two-handed position, right? And we simply take one hand off the handgun and fire. What will happen to the handgun? Well, it's going to recoil to the place where there's no pressure, right? So if you look at my position, we call the two-handed arm position the upper body triangle. If I take the hand off the handgun, now there's no pressure on this side of the gun. And you can also see that the arm is not behind the gun. So with my one-handed structure, I want to do a couple things. Number one, I want to get the arm behind the gun. And I'm going to give you two options here. Option number one is to take the handgun and start to cant it until it's lined up with the arm. Now, if you look at the arm position, the arm and the handgun are lined up, okay? Option number two, and this is a little more difficult for me for my right shoulder, because my right shoulder has a little bit of a tear in it, right? But it's not too bad. I'll suck it up for you camera live viewers. Is to take the elbow and rotate the arm down, right? But either way, whether I do this or do this, the principle is get the arm behind the gun. So if I'm in a good one-handed structure, you notice that the arm and the gun are lined up. So if the arm and the gun line up, where does the recoil force travel? Think about that for a second. Well, the recoil force, generally speaking, travels straight through. I know when the gun recoils, there is some torquing of the handgun because of the rifle into the barrel, but it's minimal, and most of you probably don't feel or notice that. So generally speaking, if I get the arm lined up with the gun, this is the canted position, right? Or the arm lined up with the gun, or let me switch hands, the arm lined up with the gun, the recoil force now travels down the arm into the body. Now, if I shoot the gun like this, where the arm is not behind the gun, the only thing controlling this recoil is the strength of my hand and my thumb. Will that be a better system than getting the whole body behind the gun? Of course not. That's why I always say, get the arm behind the gun and the body weight behind the arm. So once I've got the arm behind the gun, I'm going to use the canted position for the camera today. Then I'm going to take my upper body, and I want you to watch what I do. I'm going to take my upper body, and I'm going to rotate it forward. Almost all of my weight is on my right foot. My left foot is very light. I can pick it up off the ground. So I've done two things. I got the arm behind the gun, and I got the body weight behind the arm. The third thing that you have to do, well, I'm going to give you a tip and a thing. The tip is play with flagging the thumb, right, in different positions. Because what I want to do is I want to have as much pressure behind the gun as possible. If I take my thumb and put it down here, now there's a gap in the rear portion of the handgun. So when the gun recoils, it recoils like this, right? So I want to take my thumb and I want to start to position my thumb higher but not so high I lose my grip. But I call this a flag thumb. Be careful with that terminology, right? We got into some issues in a bigger circle class on that. So I'm going to flag the thumb up. That also pulls my fingers into the grip, and that's about as high as I want to go. My thumb on a 1911 will ride the safety. If you're shooting a 1911, your thumb needs to be on top of the safety. Shooting an ambi safety, thumb needs to be on top of the safety, right? And then last but not least, the 3 supporting fingers. This is really important. I'm going to grip really hard with these 3 fingers, and then I'm going to pull the trigger. I don't want pressure changes in the fingers as I'm shooting. I don't want this. I want this. See the difference? Gun's not moving now. Gun's moving. Gun's not moving. I like these close-ups with the camera, by the way. Oh, and by the way, is it Keeping Tongue Jr.? Have you ever accidentally shot it off in the house? No, I've not accidentally shot my gun off in my house because I generally follow good safety principles and protocols. So I attempt not to shoot my gun in my house, or at least I try to minimize it. I mean, there's probably 60 or 70 holes in this house if you were to look around that I've had. But, you know, after the 59th time, Sippington Jr., I decided to start checking the guns and making sure they're unloaded. So, no, I only have 59 holes in the house. I don't have 60 yet. So that's a safety rule violation. All right, what do we have here? Oh, Nicole, you're welcome as well. Adam from Poland. Good morning. How are you? So Aaron talks about Ragusa. Do you find the release of the trigger sooner causes sight movement and a missed shot? That's a fantastic question, Aaron. And I'm doing some very accuracy-oriented shooting lately. And let's break this down a little bit more detail. Then we'll go into some more Q&As. When you fire a handgun, if the gun is not an airsoft gun, it has recoil. So all of us have created, and Rob Latham uses this term best, a recoil control flinch. So when you fire, right, if the gun, boom, recoils like this, we, the human mechanism, have to pull the gun back down, aim it again. If you had no recoil control, like 0, you would fire the handgun, boom, and it would flip high and would stay up there. So all of us have learned or created a recoil control program, recoil control cycle, a flinch, call it whatever you want to call it. But the point is, when we initiate that motion of the gun, where we go boom and bring it back down, we pull the gun back down. And I don't have a conscious recognition of that. It happens at the subconscious level. It has to be able to shoot 5 shots in a second. You have to have a subconscious, preconditioned recoil control flinch, if you will. But in terms of your question, Aaron, I am not moving anything until the gun fires. If I move something before the gun fires, for example, I'm trying to pull the trigger and I release it in terms of the gun, I will obviously not hit the shot. But the point is, if I have, if you can see the lasers in the camera, it's kind of cool with this pistol. You're going to see the second laser appear when I fire the gun. Boom, bullet's gone. Now, you might see a little bit of a motion in the front of that muzzle because there's pre-travel, right? There's the slack in the trigger, and then there's a wall where when we fire the gun, at the end, when we fire that gun, there's some over travel, right? If there's a lot of over travel, you might see the motion in the muzzle itself. But in most cases, the bullet's already gone. You've had no effect over the flight of the bullet in that case. It's already downrange, is out the barrel. What we want to avoid, though, is any motion of the gun before it fires. I would not want to, I'll aim right to the left of the laser. Yeah, you can see it. I would not want to have any of this motion. See the difference? Versus this, where I'm prepping the trigger. It's about as good as I can fire. It's about as good as I can hold on this little blue light that's on my camera. This would be a movement before the gun goes off. See it? All right, hopefully you saw that. If that makes any sense. Donald Green, have a great day, man. Nice to see you. Sorry, folks, got a phone call. I had to ignore. Hey, King Hero. Hi, sir. You're my friend. Professional want to send first. Get fails. Can you send me a friend request if I don't mind? King, yes. Maybe I'll send you a friend request. Unfortunately, Mr. King Hero, I think I'm maxed out on my friend requests. So if I don't send that, that's why. Send me another one and I'll try to respond to your friend request. By the way, we still have 125 live viewers on, which is incredible. All right. So who else do we have here? What other questions do we have? Let me go back and make sure. So Radio and Gun says a lot of instructors preach the follow-up procedure after shooting a target. Why not bring the gun back to retention? After all, the follow-up is an extended low ready, and it takes the same time to set the gun back. So your radios and guns, I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. Why not bring the gun back to retention? So let's break this down in terms of shooting. If I'm in an extended shooting position and I fire a shot, what do I do next? So the question is dictated by the circumstance. If I'm in a pistol match and I know 2 shots are required on that target, I will have fired 1 shot and then I'll fire a second shot. If you're in a defensive situation and you decided you were going to engage, defend your life, and you fired that shot, right? At some point in time, your vision is telling you, hey, they can no longer hurt me. They fell down. They are down. They dropped the gun. They ran away. Whatever number of rounds or trigger pulls that is, I don't know. I can't dictate that. But after you're done shooting those shots, then I might tell my students to come back to a compressed position. I call this the high ready, right? And continue their scan process, which focuses primarily on the threat, and then go through some other actions. Now we're kind of getting off into the woods, not structure anymore, but that becomes the post-shooting actions, if that makes any sense. I teach this position. I don't necessarily teach this position. I don't think this is wrong necessarily, but I don't like a gun position that can be compressed or collapsed or grabbed. I would rather get the gun if I'm not shooting it closer to my body, so I can always re-extend it as fast as possible. So I think the circumstance depends if you're asking about follow-up or follow-through. There's a difference between follow-through and follow-up. A lot of us want to use the term follow-through in shooting, because it was part of the original NRA terms or whatever else. Well, when we're talking about follow-through on a handgun shot, once we fire that shot, our follow-through happens at a subconscious level where we return the handgun from recoil if shooting another shot is important to us, right? Think about that. And we get ready to fire the next shot. So a handgun follow-through might look like this. If you watch my trigger finger, if I fire a shot and the gun recoils, boom, I'm reset and I'm getting ready to fire again. Or maybe on an easy shot, I might fire that shot and right through the trigger. This is what I call an accelerated pull. This is what I call a control pull. Okay, and every time I'm resetting the trigger. That's follow through, but in terms of your question, follow up might be a scan process. Okay. Oh, good question. So Joe Piazza, when shooting still challenge, should your hips be centered to the arena or hips facing the first target in the draw? Fantastic question. And honestly, Joe, it depends on the stage. But if I'm, for example, 5 to go would have target, stop plate right there, right? I'm going to have my hips in a position that is oriented slightly toward the array of the 4 targets because they're the most important I have to hit. So in terms of 5 to go, and you can apply this to any of the stages, my hips would be probably a little bit more square to that first target, right? And the other 4 targets. And I know when I drive to the stop plate, it's closer and it's easier to hit. So I can drive with my hips and then fire that shot on that stop plate. But no matter what, you can't see my feet right now there, Joe, but my feet are still wide and aggressive, set up in the corner of the box, where once I fire those shots, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, 5, stop plate, I can drive hard to the stop plate itself and follow through. So it depends on the stage. Smoke and Hope, right? My hips are pretty wide and aggressive, and I'm going to have a little bit of a hip orientation toward the first target I'm shooting. And then I'm rotating my hips, and my feet are rotating, and I'm using my whole body to move the gun left or right, if that makes sense. Okay. Let's see what else I have here. That's right, Brenna. You got that. DDC for life. Will Melton, good morning, Will. Cody, awesome. Thank you for watching. Radios and Guns, you're welcome. God bless to you too. Have a great day. Okay, so Steve, does all of your fingers have equal pressure on the front of the grip, or do you have more pressure on the lower portion? Man, Steve, that is a fantastic question. I will tell you that generally speaking, my gun hand fingers are generally pretty equal. Right now, when I grip, it's like my three fingers are just, if I just told you to grab a stick as hard as you can, you would go grab. You would probably feel, you just reach out and grab that stick, right? So with my grip, I'm gripping equally with three fingers. I'm not opposed to maybe more pressure, but I think here's the deal. I think that a lot of times we think so much about the small details or the fine tuning that maybe we forget that would be very difficult to fine tune in a manner under speed and or stress. I hope I'm saying this right. It would be very difficult for me to fine tune the different finger pressures when I am just trying to grip really hard with those three fingers. Right. And I know, Steve, when I grip really hard with these three fingers, now those fingers tend not to move anymore. And if they tend not to move anymore, I won't move the gun. So they're about even. Hopefully that answers your question. Hey, Gerald, watch that replay, buddy. Oh, man, let's see what else I have here. If you have a question, folks, throw it up. I'm scrolling back to see if I have any more questions, by the way. Hello, Sheila. I see you waving. By the way, those of you that hit the like button, thank you. We hit like 160 this morning. This was fantastic. And Paul from the Philippines, you're welcome, sir. I hope it helped you out. Good morning. Joey, we talked about one-handed for you. If you have a question, throw it up there. I think we covered that pretty well. I agree. Craig says extend, prep, and press, both live and drive, has been the best drill. When Craig mentions extend, prep, and press, I want to show you what that drill looks like. And it's probably the single most common drill I do on the range. I do it almost every time I go to the range. And it starts from a good structure, and you can play with different structures. Sometimes I may work on extend, prep, and press from what I call an off-balance position. But in the extend, prep, and press is in all of my programs, the Defensive Handgun Fundamentals program, the Competition Handgun Fundamentals program, the IDP Mastery program, all the programs. You can get in the link and check those out if you want to. But the point is, I start from that touch position where I'm touching the trigger. And some of you advanced shooters, you may start off that position where you have to index and touch and build the grip. I think Jed Leslie, the Jedi, I think he calls that the wave. I've always called the Judy chop and been calling that for 15, 20 years now. But the point is, I start from that index point and I practice building the grip, prepping the trigger, and firing a shot. Or on an easier target, I would build the grip and press right through the trigger. On a hard shot, I would build the grip, prep the trigger, verify that the gun is aimed, right, that I've established alignment, and then press that shot. And you can set the extend, prep, or press drill up on one target, and you can use like an IDPA target or a USPSA target. You can shoot for the big zero, you can shoot for the small zero, and then maybe down lower on the target or on the side, draw a teeny tiny zero. So you can work on extend, prepping, or pressing, and stabilizing the grip on 3 different target areas. And you can work 100 rounds with that drill, and you can learn recoil control like it's nothing else. So fantastic drill. All right, Australia, should there be a gap between the side of the trigger? Oh, man, that's John. That is a fan. You all are asking some fantastic questions, John. Good question. It's probably something I should have covered. So in terms of John, I'm going to actually show you this angle right here, because this is important, right? He's asking, should there be a gap between the trigger finger and the side of the gun? Now, here's the deal. There's no definitive answer on some of these trigger position questions, because if you look at my buddy Rob Latham's trigger finger, it's touching the gun, because he has to touch the gun because he has teeny tiny little short fingers, right? He can't reach the trigger if he doesn't do that on some guns. Where if you look at my trigger finger, there's a gap. I can literally almost see the camera with my eyeball right here. Right here. There's a gap in that position. So you can see a little bit of a, watch this for trickery. How about this? So if you look at that gap, right, you can see that gap. There's a light coming through it. That was camera magic. There is a gap. And what I don't want to do, if I can avoid it, is I really don't want this finger pushing into the gun and moving it like this. But in reality, if you look at how my trigger finger pulls the trigger, right? I pull the trigger straight to the rear. There's not a lot of motion in my trigger finger like this. I'm generally speaking, pull the trigger just like this, straight to the rear. What I want to try to do is I want to try to make contact on the front face of the trigger. And you can see there is a gap between my finger and the side of the gun. That's about as fast as I can pull the trigger, that last couple shots. Okay. So yes, there is a gap because we don't want our finger pushing into the gun if we can. For some of you that are shorter fingered and have a bigger grip on your handgun, you might have to, right? You might have to touch that gun. Just focus on not moving this portion of your finger. Just pull the trigger straight to the rear like this, right? I will tell you though, in relation to pulling the trigger, here's a secret for you. These fingers are more important than this. Everybody's like trigger control, trigger control. Everybody focuses on aiming and trigger control. Here's what's really important. Not moving the gun. Don't move the gun with this part of your hand. That's the real secret of shooting. I put that one, that's $1 million secret right there. This and the sights, not as important. Assuming you know how to aim the handgun, and almost everybody does. Rarely do people make a mistake on the aiming process. I say rarely. I didn't say never. I said rarely. Oh, Tony calls that dragging the wood, right? So John, hopefully that answered your question. All right, folks, I am at 8:30. I actually went long today because I probably won't go to class this morning, which means I'm going to go to the range. I'm going to go to the range instead of going to class. Maybe I'll go to class tomorrow, and my coach will be happy to see me, right? For you, I stayed on. We have 245 laughs, likes, tears, and hearts. We still have 121 live viewers on. Today we talked about structure. I'm going to start to wrap this up a little bit, but if you have a question, throw it up there. I'll scroll down. I have time this morning. Today was supposed to be a special edition where I answered all of your questions, and I just wanted to help people out. Okay. Let's see. Caitlin, you're welcome. You're welcome. Kate number 2013, coin number. Good. And Jason, I appreciate, man, you being part of our entity and watching as well. Cool. All right. So really quick, just so you know, if you're watching this, let's summarize this. We talked about structure. Structure starts from the ground. Get those feet nice and wide and aggressive. We also talked about the relationship of the hips. If you didn't watch that part, rewind the video and watch that. It's critically important. I can't tell you how important it is. And we talked about that upper body position as well. Remember, the upper body, it's almost a lever. And if you want to have advantage against the handgun, the upper body has to be forward at a forward angle. It cannot be upright, and it certainly cannot be back. So you want to adjust your upper body and have it in the right position. I talked about nose over toes in that phraseology. In relation, I would rather say get athletic, which means get your upper body behind the gun as much as possible and counterbalance with that butt, counterbalance with that lower body so you have a very athletic position. It's almost like the beginnings of a squat or a deadlift. And of course, the weight is on the balls of your feet, your knees, your bent. We also talked about the importance of the strong hand position. I taught you how to index the web of the hand, the tang of the firearm. We talked about the Judy chop on the second hand. I broke that down into detail. We talked about clamping pressure. By the way, I'm going to repost all of this stuff on Instagram. If you don't follow my Instagram feed, go to Instagram. As soon as we're done, find Mike.Seeklander. It might be Michael.Seeklander. Give me a follow, send me a message, say, hey, I saw you on the live stream this morning. Thank you for what you do. Or I don't like you, Mike. That's fine too. I'm just trying to help people. We talked about the clamping pressure. We talked about gripping the gun really hard. No tremors, but grip the gun really, really hard. When you fire the shot, release the trigger. We talked about the trigger mechanics and everything else, folks. We talked about a lot of details today. I think this is probably the best live stream grip discussion I've had with shooters in a long time because some of you all asked some questions that were fantastic. Jeremiah said, just an observation, regardless of skill level, there's always something good to take away. I appreciate that. You say you're rolling your elbows, which is incorrect. Jeremiah, I'm not sure if it's correct or incorrect, but I know that whenever we looked at a technique, rolling the elbows, raising the elbows, driving the elbows, rolling the hands, we can look at those from a principle-based standpoint and find out what pressure they're putting on the gun and then assess whether that allows us to shoot the gun as accurate and as fast as we want to. That's really the key, right? And folks, I don't have Christopher. Let's do Christopher's question real quick. Any recommendations for finger placement on short guns like CCP and Bug? Okay, so if given a choice, and this is actually, I guess, a smaller gun, but the grip size is not tiny on this gun. If I have a choice, my trigger finger placement is such that I'm going to make contact right about the center of my fingerprint. The principle, the reason I'm doing that is I want to apply pressure to the front face of the trigger, and I want to pull the trigger directly to the rear. I don't want to take my trigger finger and have it in a position on the trigger where I wrap around or I influence the gun in either direction. I want to have the trigger finger in a position on the handgun so I can apply pressure directly to the front face. So depending on the grip size of what you're trying to do, CCP or a bug gun, grip size is going to dictate what your trigger finger does. I would tell you, if you can, Christopher, to strive to have that trigger finger in a position where you're applying pressure to the front, face the trigger, and then applying that pressure directly to the rear. Okay, so hopefully that answers your your question. And Chris, I'm at the bottom of the grip. So, I understand. Sorry, Christopher, you're asking about this, right? So here's the reality. In terms of importance of the grip, this is the most important. This is less important. This is less important. So if the grip is not long enough that your hand, when it's driven high up the back strap, where it comes off the bottom of the grip, you can see mine does on this gun a little bit, right? You know, and your pinky comes down there. There's nothing wrong with any of this position. I don't know if it really matters. I would just have my lower fingers in a position where I can minimize the influence or the motion of the gun. What I'm really concerned with, though, is the upper part of the grip and what my hands are doing on the top part of the grip. I'm not as worried on the bottom, meaning if the gun is so small where I can't get my pinky on it, that's okay, because these become the important gripping fingers, if that makes sense. Okay, I think I understood your question. There you go. Hopefully that answered that. So, all right, folks. We've been on for 1 hour and 7 minutes. Had an incredible showing this morning. What a fantastic video. We're going to have hopefully some people that are happy and walked away with some questions finally answered. I also got to answer some questions that I've wanted to answer for a long time because I get follow-up questions on every grip video I post. I will chop this bad boy up into hopefully some really great content and post it on Instagram as well, and probably on my YouTube page. You can also watch typically the full live stream on IDPA's YouTube page. I've given them permission to post it over there as one of my duties. Christopher, you're welcome. Folks, thank you for sharing. If you're still on right now with me, thanks for staying for the whole time. Thanks for clicking the like button. Thank you for sharing it with your friends. The replay is available. So if you have someone that might benefit from stuff, share it. Tag someone on Instagram. You know, I guess that's really the only thing I'm going to ask is if there's someone that can learn from this, tag them, share it, send it to them. You know, help me grow my Instagram or whatever else if you want to. Okay, that's all I have, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. And until then, train hard.